Are we at the end of the world? Look around. Wars, earthquakes, fires, political madness, mass surveillance, AI. But what if this was all predicted thousands of years ago? Enter one of the most shocking and strangest books of the Bible, the Book of Revelation. It's a vision of the end times where reality collapses into cosmic war. Beasts rise from the sea, a dragon devours the stars, a dark mark even controls who can buy or sell, and a blood-soaked Messiah rides into battle. So this has become the script, like the master prophecy for how billions of people believe the world's gonna end. But here's the question. Is Revelation really about the end of the world, or is it about something else entirely? Because get this, for centuries, mystics, secret societies, and occult initiates have believed this book holds a code, not for destruction, but transformation. And in this video, we're gonna crack it wide open. From ancient visions to doomsday cults to political paranoia, we're tracing how Revelation became the most dangerous, strangest, and misunderstood book in the Bible. And we're answering the question, what if it predicted what's happening in the world right now? What you're about to discover, it's gonna change how you see everything. Okay, so the book of Revelation is the final book in the Bible, but it has a big problem. It's totally different from the rest of the books of the Old Testament. Let's think about it. How did we go from love your enemies to lake of fire for everybody? Did Jesus have some kind of personality transplant? In Revelation, he's a warrior drenched in blood, like he just walked off the set of Game of Thrones. And I'm not even exaggerating here. Revelation describes Jesus wearing a robe dipped in blood, ready to strike down the wicked. My name is Morgue, and I'm an ex-Christian revealing hidden knowledge to transform consciousness and create a new world. And before we can even begin to unpack what the book of Revelation means, we need to look at what it actually says. And fair warning, it's crazy, like demons with scorpion tails level crazy. But once we've gone through all this madness, then we're gonna talk about what it actually means, not just as prophecy, but as code. All right, so here's how it starts. There's this guy named John, and he's old. He's been exiled to a barren island called Patmos, basically left to rot for his beliefs. But one day, he says that something happened, something that he wasn't expecting. He writes, "I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day, and heard behind me a great voice, as of a trumpet, saying, I am Alpha and Omega, the first and the last." Okay, so I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day? That sounds cryptic, but basically he was in some kind of altered state. Prayer, vision, mushroom-induced trance, holy LSD, he doesn't explain. But what he does say is that he heard a voice behind him, and when he turns to see who's speaking, he loses all sense of reality. In the book of Revelation, John writes, "And he had in his right hand 7 stars, and out of his mouth went a sharp 2-edged sword, and his countenance was as the sun shineth in his strength. And when I saw him, I fell at his feet as dead." All right, so who the hell was this? Jesus, but not like anyone's ever described him before. He's holding 7 stars, a face shining like the sun, and a sword coming out of his mouth. All right, for those who don't know, I'm actually a professional sword swallower. Yeah, and apparently so is Jesus. Who knew sideshows were popular in heaven? And John straight up faints like he just watched the whole thing from the front row. Now, I've had a ton of people pass out at my shows too, but usually they're not writing scripture about it afterwards. Anyway, this figure, this terrifying vision of Christ says, write what you see, because what John's about to witness isn't just for him, it's for everyone. And this is where things really start to spiral out of control. Suddenly, John's not on Patmos anymore, he's somewhere else. Heaven itself, he sees a throne with a rainbow around it. God was repping Pride Month way before it had a flag. Someone's on this throne, and lightning and thunder and voices are booming from it. The throne is surrounded by 24 elders wearing crowns and 7 blazing torches burning in front, which are called the 7 spirits of the Lord. But it gets even wilder because there are 4 strange beings, like animals but not. One looks like a lion, another like an ox, one like a man, and one like an eagle. But get this, they all have 6 wings and are completely covered in eyes, front and back. And these beings never stop speaking. Over and over, day and night, they say, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come." And John's just watching all this. Then someone appears holding a scroll, but it's sealed shut with 7 wax seals. And suddenly this voice asks, who is worthy to open it? But nobody can. And John starts crying because this scroll contains the future, what happens next. And if no one can open it, no one's ever gonna know how the story ends. But then someone steps forward. Now John's expecting a lion, the Lion of Judah, but instead he sees a lamb. But this is not a peaceful little lamb grazing in a meadow. It was a lamb standing as though it had been slain, with 7 horns and with 7 eyes. Okay, so recap here. There is a bleeding, undead mutant lamb with 7 horns and 7 eyeballs. This is Jesus again, but not turn the other cheek Jesus. This is eldritch horror Jesus. And when this lamb breaks the first seal, what happens next is crazy. John says, I looked and behold a white horse, and its rider had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he came out conquering and to conquer. Okay, so you know what's coming. This is the first of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. This one is conquest, and this guy's out here like some divine colonialist. But then comes the second seal, and out came another horse, bright red. Its rider was permitted to take peace from the earth, so that people should slay one another, and he was given a great sword. This is war. And then the third seal unleashes a black horse. Its rider had a pair of scales in his hand, and I heard, a quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and wine. This is famine, aka inflation, economic collapse. The basics of survival are now luxuries. If you thought tariffs were bad, this guy is basically the doomsday prophet of Wall Street. And then the 4th seal. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and its rider's name was Death, and Hades followed with him. Death, and behind him Hades, the underworld itself. They were given authority over 1/4 of the earth to kill with sword and with famine and with pestilence and by wild beasts of the earth. 1/4 of the world gone. This is mass death on a global scale. Then the 5th seal, but it doesn't release a horseman, it reveals a cry. I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been slain for the word of God. They cried out with a loud voice, O sovereign Lord, how long before you will judge and avenge our blood? These are the martyrs, and they're asking how much longer this injustice will be allowed to stand. They're told basically, hey, hold on a minute, some more people need to die first. Seriously, it says they were told to wait a little longer until the full number of their brothers and sisters were killed just as they had been. And then the 6th seal, this one, it's the moment that the heavens start collapsing. There was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth, the full moon became like blood, and the stars of the sky fell to the earth. The sky vanished like a scroll that's being rolled up, and every mountain and island was removed from its place. This is cosmic collapse, reality unraveling, the simulation crashing. And just when it feels like the world is spiraling totally out of control, something unexpected happened. Before the 7th seal opened, there's a pause, and during that pause, John sees a group of people being sealed, 144,000 of them. Do not harm the earth or the sea or the trees until we have sealed the servants of our God on their foreheads. These people are protected, marked, and chosen by God. But who are they really? Well, John doesn't give a lot of details, but basically they've got like spiritual passes to survive whatever the hell comes next. Then the final seal breaks, and something even weirder happens. Nothing, literally. When the Lamb opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. Total silence. No choirs, no trumpets, no thunder, no cosmic screaming goats. It's the silence before the storm, because what comes next are the trumpets. 7 angels each have a trumpet, and if you thought the 7 seals were bad, get ready for this. So the first trumpet sounds, and it's like the earth is being torn apart. Hail and fire mixed with blood were thrown upon the earth, and 1/3 of the earth was burned up. Yeah, blood hail, and 1/3 of the earth was gone, like Thanos snapping his fingers. And what about the second trumpet? A mountain on fire is thrown into the sea. It says something like a huge mountain all ablaze was thrown into the sea. 1/3 of the sea became blood, 1/3 of the living creatures in the sea died, and 1/3 of the ships were destroyed. So I don't know about you, but something like a mountain on fire sounds a lot like an asteroid to me. Then the 3rd trumpet sounds. A great star fell from heaven, blazing like a torch, and it fell on 1/3 of the rivers. The name of the star is Wormwood. And then the 4th trumpet sounds, and light itself begins to dim. 1/3 of the sun was struck, and 1/3 of the moon, and 1/3 of the stars. The sky darkens, time fractures, and that's when an eagle flies through the air and cries out, "Woe, woe, woe to those who dwell on the earth." Why? Because the worst hasn't even started yet. All right, so we've had blood moons, poisoned rivers, fire hail, a screaming eagle, but the 5th trumpet opens hell. Then from the smoke came locusts on the earth. Okay, but these guys aren't just insects. These are demonic beings. The locusts looked like horses prepared for battle. On their heads were crowns of gold. Their faces were like human faces, their hair like women's hair, and their teeth like lions' teeth. Their tails were like scorpions with stingers. All right, so this is crazy stuff, like something out of the Alien movies. And these creatures aren't here to kill, they're here to torture. They were allowed to torment them for 5 months, and in those days, people will seek death, but will not find it. They will long to die, but death will flee from them. Yeah, so people are begging to die, but they literally can't. It's 5 months of non-stop demonic torture. And if things weren't bad enough, then comes trumpet number 6. The number of mounted troops was twice 10,000 times 10,000. That's 200 million horsemen, but these aren't ordinary horses here. John describes them like this. The heads of the horses resembled the heads of lions, and out of their mouths came fire, smoke, and sulfur. A third of mankind was killed by 3 plagues of fire, smoke, and sulfur that came out of their mouths. The power of the horses was in their mouths and in their tails, for their tails were like snakes. Yeah, so this is no My Little Pony here. Another third of humanity completely gone. But even after all that, Revelation says the rest of mankind did not repent. And then the story shifts again because the big bad of Revelation is about to enter the chat. John writes, "And I saw a beast rising out of the sea with 10 horns and 7 heads." This is the beast, the one that people have feared for centuries. Yeah, the Antichrist. And he doesn't rise on his own, he's given power by the dragon. And to it, the dragon gave his power and his throne and great authority. The dragon is, of course, Satan, the devil himself. And the whole world, they worship the beast. They worship the dragon and they worship the beast, saying, who is like the beast and who can fight against it? Then another figure, a second beast, rises from the earth. And this one speaks like a dragon, but looks like a lamb. Basically like a sheep in wolf's clothing. He performs miracles and he deceives, and he's known as the false prophet. Together, the beast and the false prophet enforce global control through one single system. So you see, people aren't scared of these guys though. The beast is trending. The Antichrist has fans. People are lining up to get his autograph tattooed on their foreheads. Seriously. It causes all, both small and great, both rich and poor, to be marked on the right hand or the forehead so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark. That's where the mark of the beast comes in. Without it, you can't participate in society at all. No food, no trade, no survival. And then comes the line that's haunted humanity for 2,000 years. This calls for wisdom. Let the one with understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. All right, at this point, a new figure enters the scene, and she's like anything we've seen so far. John describes her like this. I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast. She was arrayed in purple and scarlet, and on her forehead was written a name of mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes and earth's abominations. So she's riding the same beast, the one with 7 heads, and she's drunk, but not on wine, but drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. She's wasted on holy murder. She's called a whore, a mother of prostitutes, and she's not only sinful, but she's possessed by demons. Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become a dwelling place for demons. But judgment comes fast. She will be burned up with fire, for mighty is the Lord God who has judged her. And just like that, the mother of abominations becomes ash. But the final stage is now set. The beast, the false prophet, all the kings of the earth, they gather their armies in a place John calls Armageddon. And it looks like that evil has all the momentum here, but then heaven opens. John writes, Then I saw heaven opened, and behold a white horse. The one sitting on it is called Faithful and True. His eyes are like a flame of fire, and on his robe and on his thigh he has a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So yeah, this is Christ's return, not with peace, but with judgment. And he's not alone. Behind him are the armies of heaven. Come gather for the great supper of God, to eat the flesh of kings, the flesh of captains. Okay, looks like God took the whole eat the rich thing seriously. So the beast and the false prophet, they're captured. They're thrown into the lake of fire. Everyone else, slain. Mass execution. And you might think it ends there, but no, there's a plot twist. Then I saw an angel, and he seized the dragon and bound him for 1,000 years and threw him into the pit. The dragon is Satan. He's chained, thrown into the abyss. But you'll notice it says for 1,000 years. What about after 1,000 years? Yeah, here's the twist. After that, he must be released for a little while. Wait, what? Why? No one explains. God's just like, yeah, we'll lock him up for now, but let's give him one last go later for funsies. But then comes the moment that everything's been building towards. Then I saw a great white throne and him who was seated on it. And I saw the dead, great and small, standing before the throne, and books were opened. This is known as the Great White Throne Judgment. Every soul, ever, standing before a throne and waiting, books are opened, basically like receipts from every sin you've ever committed. And then there's the Book of Life, and if your name isn't in it, and if anyone's name was not found written in the Book of Life, he was is thrown into the lake of fire. But after all that, all the collapse, all the judgment, there's something else. John sees something new. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, and I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride. It's peace for the first time. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain anymore. No more suffering, no more pain, just light. But the vision doesn't end there. John hears a final warning. Let the evildoer still do evil, and the righteous still do right. Behold, I am coming soon to repay each one for what he has done. Yeah, so this is why you see people on the sides of the road with the signs that say, repent, Jesus is coming soon. That's what they're talking about. Now, look, this is the odd one out of the New Testament here. Think about it. We've seen beasts and locusts, demons with human faces, cosmic battles, mutant lambs, a dragon. Seriously, what the hell is all this about? And why is it so different from the other books of the New Testament? Honestly, it's more like something from the Old Testament. Well, context is key here. John of Patmos wrote it during a time of brutal persecution, and early Christians were desperate for hope, or at least vengeance, against their enemies. The result? A text that seems a lot more like Lord of the Rings meets an acid trip. And for something so surreal, Revelation has been shockingly influential, especially in how people think the world's gonna end. But here's the thing, not everyone agrees on what it means. In fact, there's a few major ways people have read it, and each one is different. Let's break them down. First, there's the literalist futurist view, which says that Revelation is a literal prophecy about the future, like this hasn't happened yet, but it will. Then there's the preterists or past view. Some Christians, including many scholars, argue that John was writing in symbolic coded language for the Roman Empire. In fact, in the first century, some even said that the Antichrist was Nero. Then there's the timeless symbolic view, and this interpretation says that Revelation isn't a literal checklist of events, but basically a symbolic story of the eternal struggle between good and evil. So despite these different interpretations, it's the literalist futurist approach that really captured the popular imagination in the last couple centuries, especially in America. It's the one that I was taught. They made a ton of movies and books about it, like the Left Behind series, which I read. So the literalist view is basically a warning about real specific events that are gonna happen on Earth in the near future, maybe even in our lifetime. And that's exactly what I was taught. I grew up Christian, not just go to church on Sundays Christian. I mean full on end times, prophecy charts, Kirk Cameron rapture movies, and a constant fear that the world was gonna end any minute. So here's how this timeline plays out. It all starts with something that's not even in Revelation, but's essential to this literalist view. The rapture. You've heard of it. It's this idea that one day suddenly all Christians are going to be taken up, snatched away into the sky to meet Jesus and escape what's coming next. They literally disappear. Planes fall out of skies, cars are crashing, piles of clothes are left on the floor. You've probably seen the movies. Where does this come from? Not Revelation. It's based on verses like 1 Thessalonians 4:17, which talks about believers being caught up in the clouds. The term rapture comes from the Latin translation of caught up, but again, it's not in Revelation. Literalists just assume that it happens between the lines at some point. And if you don't want to get left behind, then hit like and subscribe now. But seriously, this isn't just a channel, it's a revolution of consciousness, and liking helps spread this information so we can wake up the world. Also, check out my books on inner transformation. Links are in the description of this video. Okay, so what happens after the rapture? Well, this is where the world is plunged into chaos during a 7-year period that Christians call the tribulation. It's a time of war, famine, disease, persecution, all that supernatural horror we heard about, all the seals and trumpets. That's where that comes in. Literalists read each one as a sequential, real event that's going to play out exactly how it's described. So when the text says a third of the ocean will turn to blood, or locusts with scorpion tails will torture people for 5 months, they mean literally that, not a symbol, not a prophecy. During this time, global instability is going to create a perfect opportunity for one man to rise to power. This, of course, is where the Antichrist comes in, and according to the literalists, he's a real man, a charismatic political leader, and he'll rise up during all this chaos and offer peace, unity, and stability. He might even perform miracles. Some say that he'll even be shot in the head, then miraculously come back to life. This is because Revelation says, I saw that one of the heads of the beast seemed wounded beyond recovery, but the fatal wound was healed. The whole world marveled at this miracle and gave allegiance to the beast. So people love this guy. He'll be adored and create a one-world government, and some say even a one-world religion. And so for the first 3.5 years, everything seems fine. He brings order, but halfway through this tribulation, he shows his true colors. He'll break his peace agreement with Israel, declare himself divine, and demand worship. And that's when the world enters the second half of the Great Tribulation. And this is where things really unravel. So to enforce global control, the Antichrist will create an economic system that requires allegiance. And here's the catch: you have to have his mark on your forehead or on your hand. So literalists take this very seriously. To them, this mark is literal. It could be a barcode, a tattoo, an RFID chip, facial recognition. Whatever the latest technological paranoia is, it gets pulled into all this. Some believe it's being tested through digital ID systems. Others even point to credit cards, vaccine passports, or anything that seems to track or control commerce. The point is, if you don't have this mark, you're locked out of the economy. You can't buy food, you can't pay rent, you're a non-person. And some believe the mark will be linked to worship of the Antichrist, that it's not just technology, but a symbol of loyalty to his regime. Others go farther than this, saying that whoever takes the mark of the beast can never be saved, and that they're damned to hell for eternity. Again, that's what I was taught. Eventually, all this builds to a global war, and the armies of the world gather at a real location called Megiddo in Israel. And then just as everything is about to reach a breaking point, that's when Jesus returns, visibly, in glory, not as a lamb or a peacemaker, but as a warrior. And he destroys the armies of the Antichrist. The beast and the false prophet, they're all thrown into the lake of fire, and we've seen that Satan was bound into the abyss, and then comes the millennium. This is where literalists believe that Jesus will reign on earth for 1,000 years from Jerusalem, with peace, justice, a new temple, and Satan's locked up. But again, not forever. After 1,000 years, Satan's released for one last rebellion. Revelation says, when the 1,000 years are over, Satan will be released from his prison and will go out to deceive the nations in the four corners of the earth. Why? Who knows? But it fails, and God destroys the final uprising. And then we get what's called the Great White Throne Judgment, where we saw earlier, every person who ever lived is resurrected and judged, and those who aren't in the book are thrown into the lake of fire. All right, so all the bad guys are gone, the good guys win, and there's peace. So for literalists, Revelation's not a metaphor, it's a warning and a very real script of what's about to happen. It's a message that says, hey, prepare, get right with God, or get left behind. And if you think that this is just some silly story that doesn't affect you, think again, because this view, it drives everything. Christian movies, political views, how people vote, how they feel about Israel, about globalism, about vaccines, digital currency, and a lot more. It's a worldview that's built around a very specific future and the belief that it's gonna happen soon. But if we're gonna be real here, the literalist interpretation has caused a long history of end-of-the-world prophecies with a 100% failure rate. So let's start with the Antichrist paranoia. Revelation itself doesn't even use the term Antichrist, but it talks about the beast and a false prophet and an evil world ruler. And over time, Christian combined all these concepts with the Antichrist, essentially creating the ultimate bad guy at the end times. And naturally, everyone loves to play their favorite game of who's that Antichrist? This has led to a weird game throughout history where people identify their least favorite powerful figures and slap the label Antichrist on them. So during the Protestant Reformation, people said that the Antichrist was the Pope. During the French Revolution, it was Napoleon. In the 20th century, well, Hitler, of course. Many thought he was definitely the Antichrist. After Hitler, maybe Stalin. He persecuted Christians, so why not? In America, some even thought it was Ronald Reagan because, get this, his full name, Ronald Wilson Reagan, has 6 letters in each of the names. 666, oh my God. And then when Reagan retired to California, his street address was 666 until he had it changed to 668 just to be safe. So get this, people are so afraid of the number 666, there's even a name for it. Now, there's no way I'm gonna even try to pronounce this thing, but it's this.
Hexacosioi hexaconta hexaphobia.
Now, in more recent times, some even believe that the Antichrist was Barack Obama. Today, many people believe it's Donald Trump. And for the record here, mainstream Christian teaching expects one great Antichrist figure, not a new one every election cycle. So sorry, we can't have a new beast every 4 years. Then there's the fear of the mark of the beast. Barcodes in the 1970s, some Christians freaked out seeing them as the mark. An IBM engineer even got a letter signed by Satan congratulating him for implementing the devil's plan. The poor engineer had to explain that no, barcodes aren't hiding 666, and besides, they go on products, not on your forehead. You guys, people genuinely believe this about barcodes. Barcodes! Like God created the universe and then decided the final satanic plan would be the checkout line at Whole Foods. So then in the 1980s and beyond, every new technology, credit cards, UPC codes, microchips, spawns fear of the beast's mark. Even in 2012, a Texas student refused a school ID with a barcode claiming it was a satanic mark. And don't get some people started on vaccines. Conspiracy theorists spread rumors that vaccine syringes were secretly the mark, and some even thought that the vaccine contained a nanochip. So no, spoiler alert, they don't. There's no 666 nanochips in them. It doesn't alter your DNA to make you worship the beast either. Of course, every generation thinks they're living in the end times. Every new technology is the mark of the beast. Christians are constantly predicting the end of the world. Well, they haven't been right yet. And what's wild is just how confident they've been and just how wrong they always are. In 1844, there was this guy named William Miller, and he was a preacher. He told thousands of followers that Jesus would return on October 22nd. People sold everything, and they waited, watched, then nothing happened. The day came and went. It was such a disaster that it's literally known as the Great Disappointment. Then in the 1980s, the prophecy craze hits overdrive. Hal Lindsey, someone that I used to watch and listen to, publishes something called The Late Great Planet Earth and suggests the world could end by 1988, a generation after the founding of Israel. Around the same time, another guy called Edgar Whisenant publishes 88 Reasons Why the Rapture Will Be in 1988. He was so sure, he said, only if the Bible is in error, am I wrong? Well, guess what? Spoiler alert, he was wrong, which by his logic wasn't great for the Bible. But instead of backing off, he just kept revising the dates. Well, 1989, 93, 94, none of them panned out. Then came Y2K. The Y2K panic, where people thought computers were gonna crash at midnight on January 1st, 2000. Well, some believed that that would spark and trigger the end times. I was terrified of the rapture as a kid. I'd turn on the TV to check the news just to make sure people hadn't vanished. And during Y2K, my parents were ready. They got barrels of water, shelves of canned food, like we were preparing for some divine nuclear winter. Then nothing happened. Midnight hit. Jesus didn't show up, and all the cans of cream corn just sat there for the next decade. But maybe the most dramatic case was in 2011, when Christian radio host Harold Camping predicted the rapture would happen on May 21st, and he was so convinced, he spent millions putting up billboards all over the country. Some of his followers gave up their life savings. When the day came and nothing happened, he claimed, it had been a spiritual judgment, and that the real physical destruction would come 5 months later, on October 21st. Well, that day came and went too, nothing happened, and eventually he apologized and said it was wrong and sinful to set a date at all. Yeah, you think, and yet people still haven't learned. New dates pop up every few years, whether they're TikTok prophets or YouTube preachers. They set vague timelines just far enough into the future to build a following and then quietly disappear when it doesn't happen. So if mainstream Christianity has been trying and failing for centuries to predict the end, what about the people outside the church? What about the ones who weren't trying to escape the apocalypse but understand it? See, in the shadows, away from pulpits and prophecy charts, occultists, mystics, and even secret societies had their own interpretations of Revelation, and in a lot of ways, they saw things more symbolically, more psychologically, and more accurately. See, to them, Revelation isn't a checklist of disasters, it's an initiation, not about the destruction of the world, but the destruction of the old self. And no one captured this more radically than Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley, known as the wickedest man of the world, who even called himself the Great Beast 666, didn't just read Revelation, but identified with it. He believed it wasn't about the end of time, but the beginning of a new eon, a new era of human consciousness. Crowley didn't think the book of Revelation was a warning, but he saw it as a ritual or an initiation, a symbolic map of the soul's transformation, basically a cosmic drama about destroying old gods, old systems, and old illusions. To understand Crowley's interpretation, you need to understand something about his religion called Thelema. In Thelemic thought, history unfolds in stages called eons, which are spiritual ages governed by different divine principles. Crowley taught that humanity had already passed through two major eons. The eon of Isis, where the divine feminine and nature were worshipped, then the eon of Osiris, ruled by death, sacrifice, and patriarchal religion. Basically the age of Christianity, where guilt, sin, and suffering dominated consciousness. But now, Crowley said, we're entering the eon of Horus, and this would be the age of what he called the crowned and conquering child, symbolizing the rise of individual will, freedom, and self-realization. Not submission, submission to an outside God, but awakening to the God within, the inner star, the true self. And Revelation, in Crowley's system, isn't about Judgment Day. It's the ritual destruction of the old eon of Osiris. So all the plagues, fires, beasts, and angels, they're not coming for the planet, they're coming for the old world. That's the inner world that's ruled by fear and repression, blind obedience. The whore of Babylon, for Crowley, isn't a villain, she's sacred. She represents liberation and ecstasy, the divine feminine that rides the beast of carnal, physical existence that fully embraces life without shame. And the beast, he didn't just reinterpret it, he became it. Crowley openly called himself the Beast 666, not to mock Revelation, but to claim it. He believed the number didn't represent evil, but freedom from oppression. That the beast wasn't Satan, but the force that breaks the chains of the old order. To Thelemites, the apocalypse isn't about punishment, it's initiation by fire. It's the soul passing through judgment, stripping away false identities to emerge reborn. In the Book of the Law, which Crowley said was dictated to him by a spiritual entity named Iwas, the same themes appear: beasts and stars and judgment. But rather than warning against evil, it embraces transformation. One of the central messages of Thelema is, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Now, this isn't about doing whatever you want, it's not about hedonism, it's about discovering and obeying your true will, the divine purpose that you were born to fulfill. And from that lens, the apocalypse in Revelation is a metaphor for tearing down the false self, the ego that's built by religion, society, and shame, and stepping into your own divine nature. It's the death of the slave mentality and the birth of God consciousness. So while mainstream Christianity reads Revelation with fear, Crowley read it with fire. Not the fire of destruction, but of rebirth and transformation. Okay, so with all these different views, does Revelation really predict what's happening in the world right now? Yeah, well, kind of, but not in the way that a lot of people think. It's not a checklist of headlines you're gonna see online. It's not about scanning barcodes at the grocery store or microchipping your dog. It's something deeper. Revelation isn't foretelling specific events, it's revealing an overall pattern, an archetypal blueprint that plays out every time humanity stands on the edge of something new, and we're on that edge right now. We're watching old systems crack and crumble, governments, economies, religions, identities. We're watching AI blur the line between human and machine. People are fighting over everything, gender, reality, truth itself, and yeah, it feels apocalyptic, because it is, but in the truest sense of the word. See, apocalypse doesn't mean the end, the word means unveiling. So whoever wrote Revelation, whether it was John of Patmos or someone else, was probably tapping into something real. A shift, a change, a pressure building in the collective. They were sensing that the world as they knew it was starting to break down and that something new was going to appear. But the thing is, they interpreted that shift through fear. They saw the destruction of the old world and assumed it meant total destruction. They saw the death of old systems and called it judgment. They intuited very real transformation, but they wrote it as fire, plague, war, and wrath. It's kind of like pulling the death card in tarot and assuming it means you're gonna die, when really it just means change, an ending, a shedding of old skin, a gateway into the next stage of your evolution. And here's the thing no one wants to admit: before a new world can be born, the old world will fight to survive. And that's why it feels like the end. But it's not. It's actually life trying to break through. Think about childbirth. It's messy and painful and bloody, but it's beautiful because something new's coming through. And the uncomfortable reality is that mainstream religion often fears the new. New ideas are dangerous. New technology is the devil's work. A new world must be the work of the Antichrist. It's the same old story that gets told over and over, that knowledge and new ideas are dangerous, the forbidden fruit, the greatest sin. So religion uses the book of Revelation, as ever, as a horror story, warning us to cling to the old ways, to fear the new, to resist change. But the truth is that the old has to burn so the new can shine through. And it's happening on a global scale right now, but it's also happening in you. So the real question isn't, is Revelation coming true? It's what's being revealed in you. What old parts of yourself are dying? What inner systems are collapsing? And what truth is trying to break through and be born through all the chaos? Because Revelation isn't just about the world ending, it's about you beginning. It's time for a new you, a new world, a new us. But did you know the book of Revelation is also called the Apocalypse of John? Did you know there's a book that was banned by the church called the Apocalypse of Adam? Oh yeah. And if you wonder why God seems to be obsessed with murder, watch this video I did all about it, because in it, Adam reveals that God is actually the devil.